The contact arrived on my secondary board at 0411 station time, flagged routine, auto-sorted, under belt maintenance, Kurath sector, debris reclassification. I almost missed it. We were 17 hours into the pacification approach, and I had 400 active track feeds running. Most of them the orderly transponder signatures of our own vessels in formation. The Dominion's 9th Advance Fleet did not generate surprises. We generated paperwork, and we generated with precision. The contact read as object KV-7-774, mass 91,000 tons, profile, elongated ferrous hull, fragmented drive signature, no active emissions, no transponder, no energy output above ambient. It had been in the Kurath Belt since before I held this posting. The archive entry was 31 years old, filed by a survey drone, firmed inert on 4 subsequent passes, threat tier, 9 classification, inert subs, pre-contact debris, organic civilization origin, organal. The archive note at the bottom read in the dry shorthand our catalogers use: hull integrity marginal, salvage value negligible, no action required. I remember reading that note. Remember Will's simul satisfaction of it. The tidy confirmation that the galaxy's ledger was balanced, that everything had been seen and measured and assigned its proper weight. The Veth-Kal Dominion had catalogued 4 million stellar objects in this sector alone. We did not miss things. We did not leave threat assessments incomplete. It was, and I say this without irony even now, our greatest institutional pride. I routed the contact to my secondary board's archive confirms queue and returned to the formation feeds. At 041, the contact moved, not drifted. Debris drifts. I know the difference on a readout. This was vector-corrected motion. Deliberate. Flagged it for sensor review and watched the track update in real time. KV-7-774 was accelerating. Drive signature climbing from ambient noise to something my board's classifier hesitated over. Ran twice. Then rendered in a threat assessment color I had not seen used in 11 years of active posting. Red border unknown. Unknown, not reclassified, not upgraded. Unknown. The system had no framework for what it was reading. I opened the archive entry and pulled the original survey imagery. 31 years old, low resolution, but clear enough. The object was not a debris fragment. It had never been a debris fragment. Someone had read a 91,000-ton hull, 4.1 kilometers of it, I now understood, as the updated mass calculation finished rendering, and written salvage value negligible and moved on. I sat with that for exactly 2 seconds, before the drive signature hit a threshold that triggered fleet-wide alert, the Ardent Veil. I did not know the name then. I found it later in the records we recovered. Had been running cold for 31 years. Not dead. Not damaged. Cold. Every emission suppressed below the threshold our survey drones were calibrated to detect. Every system in a state our engineers later described, with what I can only read as reluctant admiration, as disciplined dormancy. The Terran Remnant fleet, and yes, there was a fleet. The Ardent Veil was not alone, though it was the first we saw. Had understood our sensor baselines. Had tuned their suppression to fall beneath them. Had sat in our debris catalog, Tier 9 inert, for 31 years and waited. I do not know what they were waiting for. I have theories. I believe they were waiting to see if we would leave the colony worlds alone. We had been moving toward those worlds for 11 months. I believe the filing, the formal Dominion archive update that reclassified the colony worlds as Tier 6, acquisition eligible, 43 days before our fleet entered the Kurath Belt, was what ended their patience. I believe they read our paperwork, the same way we had read theirs. At 0416, the Ardent Veil fired for the first time. I will not pretend I understood what I was watching. My board showed weapon discharge events. That classification I understood. But the yield, figures my system returned, made no sense. I ran the calculation manually. I ran it again. The number did not change. A single discharge event from the Ardent Veil's forward battery carried more delivered energy than the combined main battery salvo of 40 Dominion line cruisers. This was not an upgrade I had any record of. This was not a weapon tier our archive contained. The entry for human military technology, referenced from First Contact survey data, listed projected capability ranges based on the material science we had observed in there, construction, and the energy sources we had catalogued. The Ardent Veil was operating at roughly 9 times the upper bound of those projections, which meant the projections were wrong. Which meant the 31 years of dormancy had not been stagnation. It had been preparation. By 0419, we had lost 340 vessels. I know that number precisely because I was the one recording it. Fleet coordinator. That is my function. I track, I log. Port, so I tracked. The Ardent Veil was moving through our formation at a velocity our fastest interceptors could not match on an intercept. Vector. It was not making attack runs. It was not postured for combat in any configuration our tactical doctrine recognized. It simply moved through the fleet along a line of its own choosing. And along that line, our ships stopped reporting. At 0423, 2 additional contacts emerged from the belt. Smaller vessels, 11,000 tons each, running the same cold hull suppression profile, same Tier 9 classification in the archive. They had been in the catalog as debris for 22 and 19 years respectively. They moved to cover the fleet's escape vectors. Not to engage, they did not fire a shot. They simply placed themselves where any surviving Dominion vessel, attempting to flee toward the colony worlds, would have to pass within their weapons. A geometry lesson. The colony worlds were behind the Terran Remnant fleet. We were between the fleet and where it wanted to be. 2 smaller ships were making sure we understood that. I understand now that this was a message. Not a military tactic, communication. They were telling us, in the clearest possible language, what the engagement was about, and what it was not about. It was not about destroying the 9th Advance Fleet. It was about the colony worlds. It had always been about the colony worlds. By 0431, we had lost 900 vessels. I kept logging. What else was I to do? By 0438, 22 minutes after the first weapon discharge, 4,339 of the 400 vessels of the 9th Advance Fleet were either destroyed or non-functional. The 61 that remained, mine among them, were undamaged. This was not an accident. The Ardent Veil had stopped firing. The 2 escort vessels held their positions but made no aggressive move. We were being allowed to leave. We were being kept alive, I believe, specifically so that we could file a report. I filed it. The Ardent Veil did not pursue us. It did not broadcast any communication, any ultimatum, any declaration. It turned, a 1-kilometer hull, moving with a precision that still troubles my recall, and began the transit toward the colony worlds it had been sitting in a debris catalog to protect. The 2 smaller vessels fell in behind it. Within 11 minutes, their drive signatures had suppressed again, below detection threshold. Somewhere between the Kurath Belt and those colony worlds, they vanished from my boards as cleanly as they had appeared from nothing 31 years before. What I filed was this: Object KV7-77 Warn, and the 2 associated contacts are to be reclassified immediately. Tier 9, inert substrate is incorrect. The archive entry for human military technology is incorrect. The projected capability ranges are incorrect. Threat tier designation for every human origin contact in every Dominion survey file should be considered provisional pending full review. I recommended, and the recommendation was accepted, that the colony worlds be removed from the acquisition eligible list. Effective immediately. I have spent considerable time since that morning thinking about the archive note from the original survey, no action required, and about the particular quality of patience required to read that note, know it was written about you, and decide it was not yet time to correct the record. 31 years. The Dominion had a file on everything. We had filed the Ardent Veil as something that did not need to be worried about. We were right about that in the end. It did not need to be worried about. It needed to be left alone. Those are not the same thing. We know that now.